concepts that you've made, uh, there are reference to that even in the Bhagavad Gita. There is
Right.
somebody who says that, if my army is needs to be destroyed, and that is something which happens with the Narayani Sena also. There
Mm,
is, you talked about Shaivism, where you say that you offer it up to God, and the Gita also talks about the same
mm,
philosophy.
mm,
And Shiva
mm,
has also been said as, stated as the greatest Vaishnava. My point is, and I agree with Anuradha ji, where she says that authors need to start decolonizing also some of
mm,
the interpretations and words which are used, which actually don't have a paryay. So words
mm,
like Bhagwan, Pran,
mm,
Prabhu, or don't have Atma, don't have actual paryayas in English. My
mm,
question to you is, largely throughout all your works, you have also looked at how we should be as Bharat, as society, as civilization, thought processes,
mm, mm,
even in the way you've written your character. Sita, you told me when we had the chat that you
mm,
were inspired by her portrayal in Adbhuth Ramayan. But
mm,
what's your message for Bharat? What's your vision for Bharat that comes through in this book? There is a statement. There are people who are driven by the cause of India. There are
mm,
driven people who are driven for the cause of India, in the sense they are willing to give themselves up. And then there are
mm,
those who, like Arjuna, was for Krishna the instrument, or the pen is
mm,
the instrument for
mm,
you, but you are the
mm.
master. They are willing to be the instruments. So where is this vision taking you forward in our story today?
Okay. Firstly, I'm not the master. Lord Shiva is the master. I am the instrument. The book comes from him. All my books. But one of the things that strikes me, Anand, a very important point you've raised of how what India's journey will be over the next 20-25 years. And look, I genuinely believe this perhaps one of the best times to be born in Indian. Perhaps one of the best times to be born in Indian in the last many centuries, right? This year we crossed the GDP of our former colonial master, the UK. The last time that happened was 150 years ago. When Queen Victoria was still ruling, when the British Raj was running the biggest drug smuggling racket in the history of humanity. That was, the time when the UK went ahead of us. And most economists say that over the next 20-25 years, on a purchasing power parity basis, our per capita income will go ahead of that of every European, right? Uh, this is the last time that this happened was 900 years ago. So what we lost in 900 years will make up in the next 25. Our growth will be fantastic, and perhaps the degrowth, or perhaps the stagnation of many other countries will be quite severe. So we will obviously emerge extremely powerful. The key question then is what kind of superpower we'll be. And those are conversations that I think we should have. Should we even use the term superpower? Or should we think of a different term? What kind of society will we be? There are some, some thoughts occur to me when I'm seeing Western societies of some of the things that are causing almost an internal civil war in Western societies, and the seeds of many of these problems. Hello, what is that? I didn't do anything. Okay, sorry. The seeds of many of the problems that you see in the West today actually began, a few decades back. Some of them in their university system. So how do we ensure that we don't repeat those mistakes? The West has allowed their family structures to be destroyed completely. Um, there are various issues that we need to debate, which are extremely critical because of the pace of change that will happen in India over the next 20-25 years. The pace of change that has happened in the last 20-25 years has been transformational. It will be even faster. So, how do we ensure that with all this growth, we don't lose a sense of who we are? Uh, and especially learn from some of the mistakes that the West has made.
Mm. Well said. But don't you see that already seeping into our systems? Wokeism, and along with that, a lot of those concepts which you believe has corrupted society there. Don't you see that
Mm.
coming in? And I'm going to yield after this.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I look. There are things to worry about. I won't deny it. And then therefore, then there are things that all of us who love India should speak about. Um there is nothing wrong with with questioning, with debating, with but the point, however, is what I was making earlier of intentions. You find that many of the Western intellectuals, their intentions are to divide their own society. It's very sad. It's like the best of the West have been turned against their own societies, against their own cultures. Um, should questioning be done at least with the intention of creating unity, with the intention of carrying everyone along? Various concepts like community guilt, historical guilt, these are, while speaking the truth about the past, we must be wary of this because these things end up dividing society. There are various issues. I might actually, write a non-fiction book sometime on. I mean, it's one of the things one of the projects I've been thinking of some of the some of the things we should learn from the mistakes that the West has made over the last few decades at a societal level. I'm not talking at a political or state level. I'm talking about at a societal level, that we should learn from and not repeat those mistakes in India.
Sadhu, sadhu. You must soon.
Ananda, I'm going to come into this just to expand this and
You
open this a
better
little, little,
you
little bit
better
more.
come in, because otherwise people will say the whole conversation has been hijacked by the two Anands. So now we'll be totally silent, and it's over to you, Gautam.
No, so there is a sentence, Amish, in the book. Their actual enemies of the four brothers
Hmm,
are in their own land among their own people, and this is a recurrent theme in your book, unity.
hmm,
Last I read, it was there in Suhail Dev, for instance,
hmm,
and now we see it again with a greater conviction in War of Lanka. Uh, and let's steer away from the book or the idea, and you see it around you. You see it in countries, you see it in companies, you even
hmm,
see it in families. What
hmm.
is this itch? Have you given it a deeper thought that those who are closest to you by birth, by actions, by geography, by missions, by culture, civilization, are within them you find your biggest enemies? And I think the root is disunity. You find these these fissures coming out, these expressions of breakaway groups. Uh, you can call it ego or whatever, but still, these breakaway happen, and you can see that at a macro level happening very strongly in India today.
You see it happening in many democracies across the world, Gautam. And it's if okay, let's look at India first. In the last 1,000 years, there's this line I'd read somewhere. I can't give you the source of it because I don't know who said it, but there's this line that भारत में हरदम काफी बार किला अंदर से खोला गया है. That enemies didn't have to defeat us; we defeated ourselves. And this has happened to many great, empires, kingdoms, defenders of India. It has happened very often. From what I remember or what I had read of history, Kanoji Angre, the great Maratha admiral of the navy, lost a lot of his ships because of an internal civil war between the Marathas. He was fighting the Europeans at the same time, and sadly, internal divisions among his own people caused so many losses. Look at the case of Malik Kafur's attack of the Pandyas and the Cholas. Internal divisions caused their defeat. Malik Kafur himself was an Indian, by the way, from Gujarat, who had been converted, and he became the second greatest temple destroyer after Aurangzeb. And his name itself, Kafur, gives you the hint. It's actually that it's a corruption of kafir or kufr. And forget about India's internal divisions. I mean, like, for example, okay, but let me give some more examples. Jallianwala Bagh, for example, the person giving the order may have been British. Many of the soldiers firing were Indian, right? Internal divisions have done Indians in so often. Uh, and we need to stop doing that on religious grounds, on caste grounds, on community grounds, on language grounds. We need to stop that. If we have to grab the opportunity, the once in a millennium opportunity that we have over the next 25 years, imagine what kind of country we will leave for our descendants if India's per capita income is higher than the average European's per capita income, and we will be back to where we were 1,000 years ago. Imagine what pleasure we would die with, that if this is the legacy we leave behind. But to do that, we have to ensure we don't fight each other as we have done repeatedly over the last 1,000 years. Very often, that's often why we've lost. And you see the West as well. Think of the legacy trends that the West has. There should be no reason for them to face such serious challenges. I mean, the West, what is essentially Western European culture, expanded from what was one third of the Eurasian greater continent, or actually a quarter, even less, to end up covering nearly four continents, right? South America, North America, Australasia. Their population was actually quite small. They expanded to becoming almost a quarter of the world's population at their peak. Their GDP, their control over military tech, uh, in every way, the institutions they control, the ideological control they have, the West should have been ruling the world for the next 500 years, actually. The legacy strengths that they have. What do you think is causing the severe challenges that they are facing? Their internal divisions. Uh, there's that line, right? I don't know who said that empires are never really killed from the outside, they almost commit suicide from the inside. Great civilizations. You see the West doing that. How do we make sure India doesn't do that as well?
Can I?
Hey, hi, Dada.
Hi, hi.
Hey, guys, this
Can
is
I?
my elder brother, Anish Dada.
Hi,
Hello, hello,
hi,
hello,
Hi,
Anish.
Anish.
hi, hi. With your permission, Anand and Gautam, Amish, I would like you to expound upon something that we have discussed many times, and it has to do with when you decided to write about Ramchandra series. After Shiva trilogy, when you were not sure about what to write, what prompted you to write, and it's about. It has to do with this hatred, this self hatred, which has been taught to us because of the control over the narrative, right? And the truth gets distorted, and it has to do something with. And I'll ask Amish to talk about it. It has to do with the anger with which somebody has spoken about Lord Ram in an open forum with Amish, and it was almost screaming that this lady has spoken about how can you support somebody like Ram, who had said, dhol shudra pashu nari, ye sab tadan ke adhikari, that Ram had said that. And
Yeah.
the interesting thing was that while a lot of people believe that this is there in the Ramayana, which is true, but do not remember who said it to whom and in what context, and
And Lord Ram didn't say
therefore
it. In fact,
didn't
that's the
say it.
first thing
Right,
I
right,
told. Lord Ram did
exactly.
not say this. Yeah.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
it's like it's as if I can just give a flippant example. It's like if you've seen Andaz Apna Apna, if somebody 20 years down the line said that it was a horrible movie because that movie said कि मैं आंखें निकाल के उससे गोटी खेलूंगा or something like that, right? Which was said by Shakti Kapoor, who was a villain, and not Amir Khan. So Amish, if you could just expound that, because the truth is so important for us to know, because if we don't know the truth, it leads to self-hatred, which is one of the
Correct.
primary causes of why the civilizations, or the Indian civilization, or the way the Indians, many of the modern Indians view Lord Ram, has got distorted. So if you can talk about that, I'll really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, yeah, thanks, Dab. To everyone who's listening, essentially, this was, after the Shiva trilogy, I wasn't really sure which uh, which series I should pick up. Uh, and essentially, an incident happened, and perhaps that incident was meant to happen, to kind of upset me so much that a decision was made, and I started writing the Ramchandra series the very next day. And that was because I was at this lit fest and someone spoke very rudely about Lord Ram, and I wasn't upset about someone questioning. That is okay. But there's ये शब्दों की मर्यादा होती है. When you're talking about a god, there are certain words that should not be used. There's a certain decorum and politeness that must be maintained, even if you're questioning. Um and yes, I was actually quite upset by that. I'm not the kind of guy who shouts and screams, so I didn't shout and scream on stage. I answered her as politely as I could. I did say that the line she's attributing to Lord Ram was actually not said by Lord Ram. I clarified and gave a point, a line of what Lord Ram, did say. For example, Purush na punsak nari va jeeva charachar koi sarva bhav bhaj kapat taji mohi param priya soi. Which means that any man, any woman, any transgender, it doesn't differentiate on community. He said any man, any woman, any transgender, any living being, any plant, any animal. You give up deceit, love each other, come to me, you're my people. This is what Lord Ram says. This is a very inclusive and liberal statement. He didn't say the statement that was being attributed to him. Someone else said it. How can you blame Lord Ram for it? Uh, and these kind of
It was said by
things,
Sagar.
yeah, correct. It was said by Sagar, and these are the kind of things which create this self hatred, and these are actually straight up misrepresentations. And yes, I was Dada's right. I was actually quite upset by that. In fact, I had written an article also in Hindustan Times at that time. I think it had come out around 2013 and 2014 beginning, right?
Yes,
That
yes, yes.
and saying why I respect Lord Ram. Uh, and I started writing the Ramchand series the very next day, actually.
The main point was
One
that it
question
was a
from my
statement
end,
made by
Amish.
Sagar to Lord Ram that why are you
Correct,
hitting me when he said part your way,
right,
part the way
right,
and let me cross across to
correct,
Lanka,
correct,
and it
correct,
was attributed to Lord Ram. So the point
correct,
was that we don't know who said what to whom, and we attribute it to Lord Ram and we start hitting him, and that's the power of the narrative, and which is
mm,
why the truth needs to be spoken.
correct.
Like these days, if we look at least in around the world, there is a lot of focus on diversity, inclusivity, and
Mm,
in India also, it's going to be a significant thing in future and even today.
mm,
So,
mm.
is Amish as a writer trying to hit many darts on the board and trying to bring a subtle change by introducing these female characters in topic?
Nijar, first of all, I am who I am when I write my books. I am deeply traditional, and I am very strongly liberal, and I guess that comes out in my books. Uh, Let me answer this from a few perspectives. One, women were actually deeply respected in ancient India. You can read it in our scriptures. The Rig Veda is hymns written by Rishikas. We had women ruling in their own name, like Rani Prabhavati Gupta, Rudrama Devi. We had women, and Rudrama Devi used to lead her army into battle, actually. We had women scientists. We had women founders of universities. Vallabhi University, by the way, many don't know, was actually founded by a woman. So India was actually quite liberal when it came to women's rights, when it came to LGBT rights. I suspect that, and you'll especially see it when you read our more ancient texts. What happens is that the texts that you see that have been created in the last few centuries, yes, have become less respectful of women's rights. Yes, that must be admitted. But I suspect the reason for that is the repeated invasions we suffered. You'll find any society that suffers a lot of random violence tends to become more patriarchal. Um and you'll see like the Kurds, for example, in the Syrian area, were actually very respectful of women's rights. But it has Iraq also used to be, but that has reduced a bit. Syria used to be, but that has reduced a bit because of the tremendous random violence that these sad lands have suffered over the last 20-25 years. India suffered a lot of random violence for the last 1,000 years. And you'll notice that the parts of the Indian subcontinent that suffered more invasions and more violence, like, say, the Northwest, are much more patriarchal. And the parts of the Indian subcontinent that suffered less, like the South and the East, are less patriarchal. Uh, Now, this may have happened for the last 1,000 years. My view, however, is that over the last 75 years, we are a safe, independent country. Random violence has come down. In fact, violent crime rates in India are just a tiny fraction of what is there in the US. So perhaps the time has come to go back to our more ancient interpretations where women and LGBT rights were respected. That's one point. The second point, however, is I don't think that respect for women's rights needs to be accompanied with a hatred for men, as sadly does happen in many quarters in the West. I find that frankly bad for society over the long run, because obviously you want strong women, but you want strong men as well, right? Um if you're saying you want to protect your society from toxic masculine men could attack you from foreign lands as well. Who's going to defend your land then, right? uh, Strong masculinity without the restraint of dharma is what becomes toxic masculinity. The answer is not to destroy strong masculinity. The answer is to bring in the restraint of dharma. And in fact, I speak of that also in this book, in War of Lanka. There's a scene between, and this we discussed. Anand and Gautam were there at my event yesterday, and in fact, I discussed this at the because I was asked a question on this. And there's a scene in War of Lanka between Lady Shabri and Prabhu Ram, and there's a dialogue which Lady Shabri says that there is there is no sight more magnificent uh, than a dangerous and powerful man with complete control over his base desires, with an innate yearning for justice and a deep abiding love for his land and his people. There is no sight more magnificent. We need strong men as well. We need strong women, but we need strong men as well. That is the Indian approach to equal rights. This is one of the things we should not import from the West. That fighting for women's rights, does not equal to hatred for men. That defeats society, actually.
Quality of it.
Mm,
Second is that you use language which is completely different, and at some point could be seen, I'm not saying it
mm,
is, could be seen
mm,
to be at dissonance with
mm,
the literature that you're talking about. You use
mm,
terms like "you guys,"
mm,
"god damn it,"
mm,
or in terms of units you use kilometers,
mm,
hours,
mm.
the Lankan toast on the Lankan coast. So
I thought that was a good one. Come on.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But there was no toast at that time. The toaster was
Yeah, I
invented
know.
in
I know.
1962.
I know.
So in your story, you're toasting us. You're taking us to the past.
Mm,
In your language, you're bringing the story to the present, and that's a
mm,
remarkable feat. It is something very unique to your kind of writing. It is something that I will never be able to do ever. But uh, how does this work, Amish? Like, how do you establish a content, a story continuity, and how do you get away by "god damn it" and "you guys" and "toast" and all that?
Okay. In terms of writing flow, writing style, etc., I'm basically an instinctive writer. Um, I am hyper organized in every other area of my life. And I'm as left brained as they come, man. I've done BSc mathematics. I did an MBA from IIM Calcutta. I was a banker for 14 years. Everything, I like things organized and in their place. Even my wallet has my currency notes, would be organized denomination wise, facing right side up. I like things organized. That's and I'm a relatively disciplined guy. I'm normally asleep by 10:30, 11. I wake up early, normally by 5:36. You could call me a boring guy. Um so every part of my life, outside of my creative part, is very disciplined, organized, focused. My creative part is the only place where I surrender control completely. It is completely right brained. It's, the right brain is essentially one of the beliefs in the Indian ways. It's the seat of the Devi. It's the seat of the goddess. Uh, and I just surrender and just go with the flow. I don't control it at all. Uh, and if I did try to control it, there's no way I would have been so productive. I've written 10 books, man, in 12 years. Uh, it I don't think I would have been able to quote unquote create it by myself. Uh, I just go with the flow and it just comes. Which is why you find perhaps consistency in the way it's written. In terms of the language, look, there are like two schools of thought. Uh, One is, that you must keep the language to what the impression of the story would be. So if you're writing something that is set 5,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago, then use classical English, right? Um, and use ancient terms and put it across in a way where you can show off your research. But there's another school of thought that the object of your writing is not to show off your research, it's to try and bring across the concepts and the philosophies in as easy a manner as possible. Uh, have you read Gore Vidal, Gautam? Gore Vidal's
No,
Julian? Yeah,
no,
so
I haven't.
he's a
No.
brilliant American author, and to all those who are listening out here, I'd really encourage you to read his book, especially his book Julian. I'd read that many years back. Julian was the last pagan Roman emperor. Died in very sad circumstances. The last attempt by the idol worshipping pagans to survive, essentially. Um, but in that, Gore Vidal's he was of course a brilliant author, a brilliant researcher, but his entire approach was, my object is not to show off my research. My objective is to make it as easy for the reader as possible. So he would use modern terminology, he would use modern language. The entire idea being, make it easy for the reader so that they focus more on on the philosophies and the concepts being discussed rather than getting lost in the language. I'm a follower of the second school of thought. Maybe I can quote another example. Gautam, you'd understand this a lot more. From what we know of the language style, and Valmiki ji's style is very literary and beautiful turn of phrase, and the way he wrote the Valmiki Ramayana.
Huge,
Many of the
wild imagination,
yeah,
colors
and
and sounds
yeah,
and
absolutely. And the
yes.
way he would describe things, you notice many Sanskrit playwrights centuries later would copy Valmiki ji, right? Kalidasa in Meghdutam describes a cloud almost exactly the way Valmiki ji described it, right? Think of the influence he had on how words should be used. Whereas Ved Vyas ji was very efficient, very focused. Get the get the philosophy across as quickly as you can. So, I mean, there's a beauty to all sides, but there is this thing of keeping language efficient, uh, keeping language modern, using modern terms if you can. Like Gore Vidal would never say Mediolanum or Londonium; he would say Milan or London, because his entire point was, भाई वो शब्द इस्तेमाल करके मैं I'm not making it easier for the reader. Using the modern term doesn't take away from the philosophies and concepts that need to be explained. So I'm a follower of this school of thought. I'm not saying the other school of thought is better or worse. It's just different. That's all. I'm a follower of this school of thought that language is a means to an end. Make it efficient.
Final question that kind of leaps up from Gautam, what you asked was that Anish, I've known you for years now, and I've conversed with you many times. Uh, how come you've never written in Hindi?
How come I've never written in Hindi?
Yes,
Actually, I might. Yeah, I'm very comfortable with Hindi. You know that. I mean,
exactly,
I
exactly.
speak.
Yeah.
My my father's family is primarily from Banaras, from Kashi. My mother's family is from Gwalior, so I'm very comfortable with it. I might take it up. I might take it. Interestingly, I was asked this question at a Jagran Samaro. Dainik Jagran had organized in Lucknow, And of course, the interview was in Hindi, and I was speaking in Hindi. And then one guy asked me a question that your Hindi is very good. Why don't you write in Hindi? And I'd said, ki, if I may speak a blunt truth, if I had actually written only in Hindi, would you have invited me out here for the inaugural session? uh, at the front end. It's just because I've written in English that that well I'm visible across the country. There are so many authors who are far, far, far superior to me. But they're not marketed as much. They're not sold as much. In the Indian languages, I'm saying, and it's one of the sad parts of India today that it's the dominance of English. I'd said this in the that जागरण समारोह कि अंग्रेजी का प्रभाव बुरा नहीं है, अंग्रेजी का दबाव बुरा है, और वही हमारे साथ आजकल हो रहा है. And it's perhaps it's caused by us itself. I might write in Hindi, but I'm just saying that would I have got um, this much done, this much ability to at least speak and get my thoughts across if I hadn't written in English?
That's amazing humility,
It's a sad
and
truth. It's a sad truth. Yeah.
yes, yes, you
But I will
probably
write in Hindi. I certainly do plan to. I'm very comfortable with Hindi. I have no problems.
yes,
So I
and
certainly plan
anyway,
to.
your books are translated in Hindi, right? So
Yeah, they are. They are.
yeah,
My books are translated into 20 languages,
right.
and I insist with my publisher that all my Indian language editions also get marketed properly with proper launch events. Sadly, what happens also with language editions is वो ऐसे ही चुपचाप लोकार्पण कर देते हैं, चुपचाप
Hmm.
प्रकाशन कर देते हैं, किसी को मालूम भी नहीं होता कि भाई आ गई है ये बाजार में.
Hmm.
So, which is sad.